Hello, folks. I'm going to give it a minute or two for people to join.
Hi.
I'm going to give it just a moment here yet. It's starting to look like we have critical mass. All right, it is 2 past, so I'm going to go ahead and get things started. As always, this is a public recorded meeting that will be posted to YouTube, so act accordingly. The minutes and agenda document, if folks could drop their name in there on attendance, I would appreciate it. And we'll go through our kind of standing agenda. We've got a few different things today. I wanted to start with features. Around this time in prior cycles, we've started getting word potentially of features where they're clearly not going to happen. So I was just curious from the features lead side, have we seen or heard anything like that? I think, Kenny, last week you'd mentioned that there were maybe 65, and I feel like the number had been 66, but any notable delta at this point?
It was 66. One was removed. So we're at 65 right now. There's one that requires an exception, which I'm going to be following up on today, and there's one that I've continued to leave it in at risk because all the data was there. I just need a confirmation if it's actually going to be in the milestone. So I'll be doing that today as well. There are a few features that I have written down. So there's one around CRI that needs clarification on what stage it's at. Multi-platform is a bigger discussion, it sounds like. It was an initiative so multi-platform compatibility for Kubernetes binaries. There was some discussion and an initiative started by Cluster Lifecycle, but the back and forth on the feature issue has been that while we've started it, it's not something we want to own, and we feel that it's something that SIG release should own, which I don't disagree about. So there needs to be a bigger discussion on who's going to own that, and we need to identify who and put that up on the feature as an official owner. Priority and preemption, I'm going to reach out to some people internally at Red Hat because there's an additional feature quota by priority which has not been filed that will also require an exception. There is an email chain. I don't know if you're on it, Tim, regarding core DNS being set as default.
I have not seen that.
Okay, so that's some chatter about a survey being sent out and how long to keep the survey open for, and how should we track this, and if core DNS is going to be set as default, does that mean we should have a deprecation policy for kubedns? Should we let them both be GA at the same time? What's the timeline for both of those things? So a few questions going on that I'm going to respond to today as well. Outside of that, everything else looks good. People have been responsive in general. So, hooray!
Yeah, the multi-platform one is complex. I think we need to discuss it at a SIG release meeting and see. I think this is something that is probably also beyond the scope of what's, it certainly falls within the scope of what SIG release should do, but I think it's beyond the scope of what's been available staffing historically. So figuring out how to not just say a SIG owns it, but ensure that they actually have the ability to operationally own and act on it is the gap I think we have right now.
Right. So it smells like something that is a release engineering subproject, which kind of exists but doesn't exist. Again, I have to we have to lay down that charter and lay down what subprojects exist in SIG release. So
okay. Thank you for the update. Any questions there from the team? Okay, so moving on, I'm not sure, do we have anyone from Test Infra on? I don't think so. So just a couple notable things. So last week, the 112 release branch was created, and with that came branch CI testing. So that stuff is visible if you look in Test Grid on the SIG release tab. Now the 1.12 release all and blocking, I don't know, you call that table, sheet, link, those are visible there, and the 1.8 ones have fallen away. And I think that was all I wanted to mention for test infra. Any questions on that side of the house?
When was this implemented, the 1.2 and 12?
I think those first came in around Wednesday.
Yeah, we were working on that last week.
Oh, okay.
I think everything's up except for I think Sen mentioned that we need to add the 112 cube ADM jobs.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That then transitions nicely into CI signal.
Yeah. So based on what I have looked at, there have been multiple upgrade failures. So I'm actually following up with the cluster lifecycle as well as SIG GCP because they appear to be GCP failures. Although I have tagged other SIGs whose tests are affected by it. So that's the major failure that we have, like failures in the upgrade tests. There has been recurrence of failures and master blocking, but I guess now that we have 1.112, should I stop following those anymore?
No, we need to keep following those because so initially the two have sort of, you have a fork, but they're basically in lockstep for the time being. And once we hit code freeze, master will keep moving, but some portion of that will still get pulled back to the release. So master is sort of our leading signal on the quality and health of what we'll want to cherry pick ultimately as we get later into the cycle. So we need to understand that it is fully healthy as well. And there, I'm actually a little worried because we've got a number of things that have been failing for a while. That, I mean, if you look at just the if you just look at the last pass first failed on some of these, it looks like they got better recently, but then failed again. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. But the current list, even though it kind of shows like some of them failing since yesterday, they are actually ones that have been failing for quite a few weeks now as well. So I think we really need to start pushing more aggressively after those. And then the set of storage ones as well has been lingering here for a week and a half.
Yeah. So Cubadium is one of the problem points which has still not been for 100% fixed. It is still failing. Although apart from that, I would say that upgrade tests are the biggest issue because they have been failing for some time now. And I have actually, like I said, I've started to more active follow up now. So I'm actually pinging people a bit more often. And if I don't get follow up on by the time we have the next SIG cluster lifecycle meeting, I will bring it up. I'm thinking about joining that meeting and bringing it up there as well.
Okay, and that's tomorrow in about 24 hours time. 23 hours time from now. Okay. I will try to join that one as well. And yeah, these ones have been failing for pretty much 2 weeks. We have a set of failures there. Now there'd been some discussion of whether that it was upgrade itself or subtest, but I feel like the discussion had ended up back at it being upgrade, but
Yeah.
we need a
We definitely need a much clear signal there, because until I can get a green from somewhere that these tests are not upgrade failure, these are our tests failing. I'm going to assume that there are upgrade tests, and I'm going to follow up on that until I can
yeah.
get that.
I think right now we kind of have multiple parties who think somebody else is potentially on it, but we really need to nail it down specifically, a clear set of issues and get artifacts into the issue where if we talk to SIG cluster lifecycle, we record exactly what cluster lifecycle said for the rationale for it not being them and who next, and really for each of these start taking a concrete set of steps. I'd really like to have these resolved this week because as we inch closer to code freeze, this set of stuff that has persisted this long is really starting to worry me. So if we can get these resolved and keep things green, then for the week leading up to code freeze, we'll be much more comfortable.
I also had a flaky test issue pop up that wasn't labeled with failing tests. It's in the list. Let's see, what's the SIG on? It's a storage one as well. So I'm just calling it out in case you hadn't, if you hadn't seen it, because it's not.
Yeah, there are stores. So most likely there are. I've seen that there are tests which are failing on SIG storage. So that's also a problem point where I am considering doing a similar thing with them as well, like joining other meetings and actually bringing it up that their test failing for some time now. When are we getting a solution for that?
Yeah, and I'll make sure that I'll actually just put the right label on it. I think I can do that. So,
I think that latest one from Gwen 66376. That one also is SIG scalability. And it looks like
on mine.
Oh, did I read which? Oh, I was thinking the flake one.
Did I put that wrong? Nope, it's SIG storage. Definitely SIG storage.
Yeah, but it's flaky test SIG storage.
There's a related one for, it seems to be failing on scalability test suites. Yes.
Yeah, and so when you see 5,000 node, our normal tests don't run on 5,000 node clusters. So that's a a good sign that that's a scalability one. So, but then also it's good that Shyam JVS he's already chimed in on the issue. It's kind of hit his attention there. So
yeah, I've actually created a master issue for all the upgrade failures right now, so that everything that has to do with that with all those upgrade failures can be talked about there, so that we have a record of it as well.
Okay, and then I think probably next logical step will, depending on the word that we get back, probably split that into multiple issues where because there's a good chance that these are unrelated. And just on average, I feel like that's usually the case, and they seem to be failing at slightly different rates. So I foresee us having a little bit of a family, but to have that umbrella is good.
Yeah.
Anything else there, Mohammed?
No, I guess I would say the overall status, considering that we're close to release, is somewhere near yellow red.
Yeah, I feel like we're drifting in the red direction just by virtue of this relatively small set of issues, but having persisted for a while, this is starting to become really worrisome now.
Yeah.
All right. So, Gwen, anything else you want to talk about besides the couple you mentioned there a moment ago?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to add the correct label. Let me get back. Yeah, we have, basically there is a couple new issues. There hasn't been a whole lot of activity on the ones that I followed up on last week. So a lot of them have been sort of silent for a week, but I'm going to follow. But some of them also have PRs open, and so they're in code review right now. And so unless that's just being forgotten about, which I think it's just taking some time. So I do see some action. One issue is a very old issue that's popped up again, and it currently has no priority. So I need to follow up on that as well. I'm a little bit unclear on what the priority label does. Do we currently have a functionality for the priority on the bugs? Because
it used to be tied into the GitHub munger, the milestone munger.
Exactly.
So most of that falls away, but as we get in towards code freeze is implemented by, again, automation that looks for certain labels and also the milestone tag, so that the tagging on the GitHub issues and or PRs have to be a certain way, and for code freeze, priority, critical, urgent. Other than that, I feel like these are kind of loose planning artifacts. So like you might have a feature that's an important soon, and I think some SIGs will use that as kind of their designation that we may get to at this release versus, but it could fall to the next one. So these are relatively informal.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So I didn't immediately follow up on it. I just saw that, yeah, we got 2 new issues and somewhat sluggish progress on a couple other ones. And I keep meaning to go through and get non-milestone labeled bugs out and see look at some of those trends. And I have not gotten around to that.
I think in the next, usually kind of the next few weeks, we start transitioning into where we're really aggressively watching everything go by versus just the milestone ones, because it just gets
also,
to
people
be
are getting lazier about the milestones, and so we have to sort of evolve with that a little bit.
Yep, as the requirements got relaxed, like really 2 cycles ago around issues mapping to PRs, this whole workflow started to become much looser. But regardless of the workflow, even if we had formal structure around requirements, the meeting the requirements would lag issue being created. And as a release team, we want to know within a day or 2, especially as we're in the final weeks of the release, that issue's been opened and have a sense of, okay, this looks like a big deal. It's a problem. We don't want to hear about it 3 to 5 days later as it finally gets to some SIG's attention and they label it like, world's on fire. So we're proactively watching all of those. So any questions from the group, both on bugs and CI signal?
Are we still planning to do the 3-week code freeze still?
Yeah, so at this point, I don't see a strong reason not to have the code freeze as listed in the schedule, which would start on September 4th. But I think that will change this week if we can't get the CI signal cleaned up.
Okay, so that call is by end of this week?
Yeah, if we're not getting some traction there, my feeling is that we need to get that cleaned up this week so that next week we see kind of a solid week of green CI or only very limited failures, that we get very quick turnaround on those point failures, so that as we head into code freeze as scheduled on the 4th of September, that we can have confidence in it.
Yep, sounds good. Okay.
So the alternative would be if we this week don't make progress on stabilizing tests, that we elongate to code freeze and have it happen sometime closer to the end of August and the beginning of September, so that we can kind of clamp down and get people to focus on resolving these issues.
Yeah, let me know if you guys, any of you, Mohammed, or any of you need help following up. We'll be more than happy to.
Sure, Ash.
Okay, so that would then bring us to docs.
How are things? You guys doing all right?
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm still trying to wake up this morning. So I'm on my third cup of coffee and it's not working. Docs are going well. Oh, but CV, you're from Portland, so I bet the coffee is way better there. So it's got the craft coffee. I mean, here it's not $9 a cup, but it's still. Anyway, sorry. So obviously the PR open deadline is tomorrow. So docs don't have to be complete. Just we made this sort of this was an adjustment that Zach Corlesson made for last release that Misty then took over, which was it's usually a good indicator that a feature is going to make it if somebody can open up a PR and write some hello world type text of like, this is generally what I'm going to cover for this feature. So we made that determination. It should be a week ahead of code free or code slush, which is tomorrow. So that's tomorrow. I am following up with everybody in the features repo, the ones that are marked for the milestone 112 today. And then we'll start getting a bit more aggressive because if I'm looking at this correctly, the docs deadline is 2 weeks from today. Do I have that right? Code, no. Today's the 21st. No, 3 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today. I can't do math. 21, 28. Yeah, about 2 and some change, 2.5 weeks. So, yes. So obviously, it's definitely time to finish features, definitely enough time to start finishing docs. But just having a PR open is our goal for this week. And so we have 6 open right now. Right now, Write the Docs is in Cincinnati, so they are actually doing a PR bash. So there may be some movement on their end with all that. I apologize for the noise. That's all we have from me and Docs. You are muted, sir.
I like that this is also a forcing function, kind of looping back to the first discussion in the meeting, like where are we on features? Asking for like, hey, where's your docs PR is going to trigger some,
are we going to be able to make this release?
Yeah. So that's good and natural. So it'll be really interesting to see over the next week what PRs come back or what
definitely
and so definitely let us know if you're seeing things where your sense from a SIG is that maybe something's a little sketchy on readiness is just in the discussion. So
yep, we'll do.
So timing wise, are we close to where we were last cycle? It feels like we are, but my internal clock is off too.
Close to what?
Requesting docs.
Yeah, so I copied the timeline from last, which was a week ahead of code slush, was the docs PR open deadline. So just literally going there, making a branch, opening it against the release 112, and saying, I plan on editing a file. It doesn't matter what file or what you're going to put in it. Just basically it's like it's an official statement of like, I intend to add docs at some point, and here's where I'm going to do it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the schedule is basically the same as the last cycle, but the last cycle was maybe slightly different in that we had KubeCon and a fair amount of people on conference travel and things like that at the beginning of the cycle, but then people were more around, I feel like, in the June timeframe. And this cycle, because of how we're landing, right now, the month of August is a pretty typical North American holiday sort of time. And there have been some things where I've worried a little bit like, oh, what's going on with this? But then it comes back to like, oh, the SIG lead, like there is stuff in flight, but the SIG lead's out this week or something like that. So that's making things feel a little herky-jerky. All right, any other questions there on docs? Okay, something is in the agenda, bugs docs, question mark. I don't know if I was typing with the wrong focus. Did I type that? Somebody else type that? Anyone? All right, so what I'd intended to go to next was release notes, if there's anything there to talk about.
I got nothing.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Just wanted to check in, just in case. I know that you will let us, as things start to solidify over the coming weeks a little more, I'm sure you'll be letting us know if there are areas you need.
Next couple of weeks, things are going to start to pick up.
Yep. All right, sounds good. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about then is we kind of alluded to here with the discussion a bit ago around code freeze. So code freeze obviously targets September 4th. If we can't get some progress on CI signal, then we need to talk about elongating it, and probably just the talk of doing that will cause a quick dive. And I'm going to guess a lot of this stuff just needs a day or two of focus, but you got to have the carrot to draw people out to focus on resolving these things. So we'll have those discussions this week, and depending on CI signal. But then the bigger picture of how we do code freeze. So Aaron Krickenberger had been here on some previous calls and was talking about things he's doing to do some cleanups around labeling and process streamlining. We've had a few PRs in flight for things in SIG release and SIG PM around process improvements and lots of discussions. These are all great. Aaron's doing lots of little point cleanups that make sense individually. SIG PM, SIG release are talking about some bigger picture things that are longer term, I think, than just the 112 cycle, especially with us kind of having 6 weeks to go here. There's not a lot we're going to massively do to change processes. The one process thing that's going to hit us though yet is code freeze. So code freeze has been implemented as a couple of pieces of automation that look at the submit queue and how things are merging and what the labels are there. And then there's been a bit of documentation that describes if you want your code to merge, here's what you have to do depending on the phase of the release. At code freeze, you had the normal set of requirements on a PR merge, plus you had to have the milestone label applied, and then also a status. The status had to be approved for milestone or in progress or in review to keep the milestone from automatically being removed. And what you'd see is sort of this back and forth. Somebody would add the milestone, the bot would notice it wasn't status correct, and it would remove the milestone, and you'd sort of go back and forth. And eventually, like at some point, we're in code freeze, and everybody's like, why isn't this thing merging? And boom, 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 they apply like 6 labels, figure out the magic combination, and it merges. So much of that automation has now been turned off because we're really getting the feedback that it was mostly just annoying, that the risk management was happening more actively by us watching what was going on. So we do need to still implement code freeze. And as we turn on the automation that gates merges during code freeze, I want to propose that we remove the extra requirement around status. The status mostly tied into the bot that would automatically remove the milestone and lead to this weird sort of feedback loop. And more often than not in code freeze, once people got sort of reminded of what it took to merge something, they would just apply all the labels because they're just saying like, yes, we want this thing to merge. So I think that practically speaking, what the approvers were doing was saying, I approve. And I would like that to be a simpler process for them. And I think it's reasonable to say that the approval is simply somebody who's allowed to label it with the milestone. And then the list of people who can do that is actually pretty small. There's, well, the list is messy. There's a GitHub group. It's got like way too many people in it probably, but it's basically SIG chairs, SIG leads, or leadership of SIG. So it's a set of responsible people who already had to be involved to approve something to go in. So if we reduce the number of things that they have to do, instead of making 2 check marks to just 1 check mark, it would streamline things. So I've got something that I'm going to send out, I guess, today, because I've bounced around to a few of the leads and prior release leads as well to get a little bit of feedback. And generally, people are okay with the proposal, I think. So I'll be sending out this email later today proposing we make this streamline thing. So just FYI, I'll see that email. For Doug, our branch manager, this will mean one potential difference. That because it's been a multi-step process, it has given the opportunity, at least, for somebody to notice that they'd accidentally labeled something for the milestone and then catch it before it merged. By streamlining this, we do slightly increase the chance that somebody would accidentally label something they meant for milestone 13 as 12, and it would be able to just straight merge. if that happens, we'll either need to revert it on master, or Doug, when would normally be fast forwarding to the release branch, he would need to instead start to cherry pick around that. I'm going to guess this probably in the past would have happened once or twice, maybe during a release, during code freeze. So I don't think it's going to incur that much extra pain, but it means that we need to be cognizant of what is going into master and not have things that accidentally go into master. That shouldn't happen anyway. Like, we should already be watching to make sure things don't accidentally go into master. Like, everybody should be doing that. So I don't feel like this introduces much new and different. And then obviously, if we can come up with over time ways to better prevent that so that things don't accidentally go into master, that's better. But right now, there hasn't been a concrete proposal for both a streamlined but also a lossless process, because right now it's pretty lossy. Things can sneak into master. So until we come up with a solid way to prevent that, we're kind of where we are, and that's what kind of leads me to think that rather than having all of these levels of complexity that everybody has to understand, we make life easier for others, and we as the release team do make sure that we're doing the due diligence. So we exist for that reason, keep everybody else's life a little bit easier. Any questions or thoughts on that?
+1 to it. I know Josh Berkus was mentioning maybe we should keep around the status approved for milestone. But I agree that if we're properly pruning the milestone maintainers group, that we should only need the milestone as that metric for merge. One of the questions I had around milestone maintainers in general, I know we've got our chatter going on on that PR. So there's simultaneously the GitHub group, which has no visibility unless you're a Kubernetes member, which everyone should be. But there's also the owner's file that lives in Kubernetes. Are we checking membership in both the owner's aliases as well as the GitHub team? Or
yeah, so I went through that. So last week I looked at everybody who is in the GitHub team and in the owner's aliases, and then I looked through the automation to see what's consuming these two lists. What's in the owner's aliases file is best I've been able to determine, and also asking with the test info folks, completely unused. So that list is not. Now, sadly, there have been people who are like important people who have PR'd themselves into that list thinking it was the place to get milestone maintainership privileges, but it is not currently. So one of the things I'll also be doing, assuming there's a lazy consensus on streamlining this, is to put a PR against owners' aliases to remove that unused list. And then I've taken the set of people there and collated them compared with what's in the current GitHub list. And there are a few people that I will add to the GitHub team. Now, in the future, there's new automation that will be coming that will allow us to take a YAML file and have it automatically maintain the GitHub team. At that point, that's that much better because we actually have a process. We have PRs and we can have reviews of who's getting added and removed to that YAML, where right now the GitHub team is completely opaque. I have the magic ability to add and remove anybody to it, but that's not a good community process, right? So having it backed by YAML will be better, but right now we have what appears to be two sources of truth, but really there's only one, because the one that's GitHub that's committed in the repo is completely unused.
I think that has the one that's committed into the owner's file has one use possibly, which is that it can be used in others' owners' files. So you can use it as in the approvers or reviewers section. But if that's not used,
looking, but I couldn't. I mean, I don't have every single repo checked out, but I did some looking. I didn't find anywhere where it was in use.
Okay.
Yeah, I would kind of feel like we wouldn't want to use that milestone maintainers alias in other owner files.
Yeah. So if it is used elsewhere, it would be better for us to understand and get coordinated on reconciling this difference. So my proposal for streamlining this and including removing that from the owner's aliases will go out to all the SIG leads. So hopefully we'll get feedback from them. And if not, as much as I'm trying to remove pain from SIG leads, this is a process where if we break somebody's ability to tag a milestone, it's very trivial and easy to notice that. the bot's going to tell them you no longer have privileges. They're going to ask, hey, where did my privileges go? And I mean, it will be a very quick feedback loop there to get them re-enabled. As much as my goal is to make life easier for people, fail fast, fix fast is an option here.
Yeah, just as an additional like context for people who aren't aware, like SIGs are supposed to own code. So the idea of a milestone maintainer having access to set things within the context of code is not necessarily what we're going for. So I think that's the right route to have it in the GitHub team until Parabolas or Peribolas or whatever it's called comes out.
And that ultimately will be much better because there's clear visibility on it. But even then, we'll need to have understanding of what the preferred mechanism is. Do you inherit via the owner's aliases, or do you have automation that consumes the GitHub team so that there's not fuzziness there?
Well, my understanding of it was that the YAML is supposed to define the members of the GitHub team and nothing else.
Yeah, but you could have automation that does a GitHub query against the team membership, or if you have automation that does a checkout of KK and uses the contents of its owner's alias, that's also mechanically viable.
Right.
But I think it would be better for our automation to have a single pattern so that it's clear what's going on.
Just one question. So after you propose change, Tim, will milestone be the only blocker, or will we have also the critical urgent priority?
So all the existing criteria would still exist. So that includes like a SIG label, the critical urgent. Nothing else in terms of the labeling would go away. You still need a looks good to me, approved, all of that sort of stuff. So code freeze has always just been an additional layer of labels. So my proposal is to condense it down to one additional.
Okay, that's just a milestone.
Yeah.
So, well, my understanding was, and again, I don't really touch the code day to day, but my understanding was the priority was also used for the milestone muncher. So now so now that the milestone muncher is gone and we still have priority, how are we getting on priority? Are we getting on priority?
There is nothing today, but code freeze, as has been implemented in the past, has been adding turning on code freeze is a commit that adds a set of required labels, which has been the approved for milestone and the milestone vu1 dot whatever. And then that commit gets effectively reverted at the end of code freeze to turn code freeze off. So what my proposal would be is that when we enable code freeze, instead of committing a change that adds 2 required labels, it's a change that adds just the 1.
Sorry. So how are we handling priority now? Do we not care about priority? Are we saying it still needs to be set?
Today, because we're not in code freeze, nothing looks at priority.
Okay.
And the proposal would be that when we enter priority, we would no longer, compared to last code freeze, be looking at priority.
Got it.
Cool. Thanks.
So,
or sorry, status.
Status. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Status. So
I was going to get really confused there.
I saw Gwen's eyebrows go.
What?
Yes. Status.
So the question remains: how important is priority?
So priority is still important. That part has not changed. But like if you're asking conceptually, I do think it's important because that is in early triage one of the ways that we highlight. So issue comes in, we say like, oh my goodness, this is a big deal, or it's not. And that first splitting allows everybody to understand, like, should we focus on this? Should we try and get it into the release? So if the priority label is something that's on the lower end of the spectrum, that will currently be blocked from merging through the submit queue during code freeze. And I think that continues to be good. And it's then reasonable for somebody who wants the thing to merge to go and lobby through the SIG to say, hey, we need to elevate the priority on this. And it is truly critical, urgent. So I think priority is a good functional mechanism there that we've been using successfully.
Okay. No, as long as priority is still acted upon by some form of automation, right? I was under the impression that Milestone Manager was the only thing that was looking at it. So as long as automation is still touching it, I'm cool with it.
I'm just jotting a little note for a little more clarity in the minutes. So we have milestone v 1.12 would be required for code freeze would be milestone v 1.12, and then priority, critical, urgent. We'd have a sig label. We'd have normal, looks good to me and approved. So what the proposed removal is status approved for milestone. Okay.
I think we should also.
Yeah.
I think we should also clarify that it's all. Are we removing all status labels? If we're removing all status labels, let's make sure we say that in the minutes too.
Yeah, I have not proposed that. I think that that's a logical next step. With the munger removed and this removed, the status are effectively unused. Oh yes, kind, sorry, thank you. Is that Aish typing?
I just wanted to make sure that one's still there.
So I haven't explicitly talked about this with Aaron, but I think Aaron would very quickly, I feel like he's got some magic automation in the background, but I know it's just like his spidey sense. He'd be like, okay, now I'm going to remove all those labels. So I do expect that's a logical next proposal.
Yeah, so it's label sync is the plugin that would be doing.
Yeah. But something triggers. I know he does like dev stats queries and goes looking around for things that are minimally used or could reasonably be collapsed into some other functionality, and then proposes that the labels be actually removed and that synced across the repos. So I do, and something else maybe to mention here. I don't think this is an optimal process. Like, it's lossy, but it acknowledges the lossiness that we have. It's a fuzzy system that we have today, and we're pragmatically doing what we can within it. SIG PM and SIG release have some discussions ongoing for maybe a better overarching process evolution over time. But again, that takes time, and we've got 2 weeks to decide what we want code freeze to be. So given how we're operating today, I think it makes sense for the process and automation to recognize how we do operate today, at least, and when we can improve iteratively as we go forward. So we have 17 minutes still. Are there any topics anybody else wants to talk about? Well, I am happy to give everybody a few minutes back in their Monday. Going once.
Wait. No, I'm kidding.
All right. All right. Well, we will repeat tomorrow for Asia and Europe easier time zone attendance and go through this. And Mohammed, definitely let us know if you need any additional help on CI Signal this week. I think for all of us, this is the priority to help out anywhere possible to get those conversations turned into concrete action lists and get the signal cleaned up.
Yeah, if you need help from
sure.
me, I think I'm fairly adjacent to that. So let me know.
Sure. I'll definitely let you know. Like I said, like I'm going to reach out to the SIGs this week, so like in their meetings and stuff. And if I'm not getting a good response after that, I think we might have to start pushing it up to a high level.
All right. Well, we'll touch base again tomorrow then. All right.
Later, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, bye. Thank you.
Bye.